Podiums make me nervous. You think that I would feel protected and secure, but I don't. I need to it needs to be a conversation for me and not a presentation. And I don't have any slides for you today. You're welcome. Or maybe not. Maybe I'm sorry too. So, introduce myself. Okay, thank you. Hot Watlo Rate Nuk Marnie Atkins. Yil Sulatlak Yil Sul. Yil Wiyot Jaruji Dadadalis. Thank you for having me today. I have learned so much. I have pages and pages of notes.
Great, and good afternoon. My name is Heidi Moore-Guynup, and I am not a tribal member, tribal staff for the Blue Lake Rancheria, Aikwi, which is hello in traditional Wiyot language. Thanks for being here.
So today I just want to say that I am here as a Wiyot person. And I also sit on my tribal council for the Wiyot tribe in the secretary role, but that is not my hat today. Today, my hat is being a Wiyot person in this world and thinking about a port development and offshore wind farm in our ancestral territory. I want to say that what we've been talking about today, all of this restoration, all of this monitoring, all of the counting of the critters and the pollutants in our bay, Wiggy, we did that, right? We did that. As a community, we polluted. We made a situation where our animals and our plants cannot thrive, where our water is not clean. So now we have to figure out how we fix that. It's our responsibility to be in reciprocal relationship. That's the traditional way of Wiyot people, to be and live in reciprocal relationship with our environment. It's our responsibility to care for our environment and all the little critters and plants that live within it. And then therefore they take care of us. We need to approach addressing these issues with a lens generationally, not just what's gonna fix what we've done wrong now, but generationally. We have to be sure. Because if you think about it, coal, wood, natural gas, biofuels, propane, hydroelectric, nuclear, solar. We've tried all of it. Hasn't worked. Now we're talking about wind. But you know, it does work. And we haven't said it at all today. Reducing our consumption. That's what's going to do it. So I'm sorry to the developers whose jobs it is to develop industry and and develop these machineries and create labor force and But I'm here to talk to you about reducing our consumption because that's what's going to work. Please turn off the lights when you leave a room. Please walk or ride a bike or a bus if you can. Let's think about that as a community. How can we reduce our consumption? But also, locally, we are taking on the impact of the state of California. The state of California wants us to put a wind farm just outside our bay, Wiki. What's the rest of California going to do? What's their commitment to our community? Will they also reduce consumption? Will the state of California offer us incentivize us to put solar panels on our house? I can't afford them, and I have a good job, but I can't afford them. How is the federal and state government going to incentivize us to reduce consumption and allow us to have solar or our own wind turbine on our property or on our house? I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I'm asking mostly questions, aren't I? But these are the things that I think about. And then I wanted to also say that, as you heard, the technology hasn't been created yet for these turbines in our particular location. So it's really hard for tribes to have input on a project that doesn't really exist yet. We just kind of know it's probably going to float. We kind of know it's probably going to be drilled into the ground. We kind of maybe know it'll be this big. Well, according to the free, prior, and informed consent documents, both put out by the UN and the Cultural Survival, how are we, even whether you're a tribal nation or you're a community, how are we to have free, prior, and informed consent on a project if you don't quite know what it is? So, as the CRS said earlier, we take this time to listen to each other. And if this project, whether the port or the offshore wind farm goes through, we use this time to figure out how that happens and what it looks like. And I just want to say that earlier this week, they closed salmon season. So we still didn't do it right. We still haven't done it right yet by those salmon. So we got to get it right. Anyway, I just wanted to share. Those are some of my thoughts today. Thank you.
Well, I was going to read some information off of the NASA website, but somehow in my pocket, it took me not to NASA. So one moment. Sorry. Yeah.
I could also sing karaoke.
Okay. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about particulate matter. It's estimated that exposure to outdoor air pollution is responsible for about 4 million premature deaths each year, with about another 3 to 4 million resulting from exposure to indoor air pollution. That is air pollution that's responsible for about 1 in 9 deaths worldwide, and that's from the WHO in 2018. The majority of deaths are associated with fine particulate matter of less than 2.5, whatever that means, UM. Arnie, help me out. Thank you. And width. Let's see here. Also, it can also come in the form in the atmosphere through chemical reactions that transform gaseous pollutants such as sulfur dioxide, ammonia, nitrogen dioxide to particulates. So I just wanted to mention that, kind of putting into perspective like the importance of reducing our consumption as being integral to the life and health of babies, of adults across the world. And we also know that there's inequities of disparate health outcomes depending on where you live in the world and whether or not you have access to clean oxygen, clean water, clean natural environments, etc. So I just wanted to kind of ground what Marnie was saying and what folks that are a lot smarter than me have been able to quantify, kind of illustrating the importance of doing probably a diversification of disruptions to the climate crisis and to like our current climate reality. So I had the privilege of being at the convening where Secretary Holland, Acting Secretary Julie Su of the Department of Labor, where Congressman Jared Huffman and many members, including Jana Gagnon of Governor Newsom's cabinet, convened and had the honor of listening to tribal perspectives around offshore wind. Blue Lake Rancheria has their own unique tribal perspectives, as do all of the other tribes. I'm not standing up here trying to speak on behalf of the other tribal nations, but the title of this moment in time is Tribal Perspectives around Offshore Wind. So I'm going to do my best to share what has been publicly expressed. I believe that all the tribal nations that were in that room expressed an understanding of the deep need to disrupt climate change in our current climate reality. That's something that they all share. They also all shared their belief in 7 generations. So it's not just about improving the life and outcomes for those of us that currently exist, but for 7 generations out. And the notion of leaving the land and the environment and our water and our organisms in a healthier place than when we found it. And unfortunately, we've been on this trajectory of decline in the health of our environments. So there was a lot of consistency around those themes. There's also a lot of consistency around concern about the importance of ceremony, cultural ceremony, and how things like massive blades out in the ocean could potentially or will disrupt some of the view sheds. And thinking about what can we do to minimize that? What can we do to be thoughtful about that, given this kind of roadmap of 10 years to figure out some of the big complex questions. Blue Lake Rancheria in particular, we believe that there are a lot of variables associated with offshore wind that give us pause. However, we also believe that we have to do something very large scale to significantly disrupt the current condition. And we also believe that a project such as the offshore wind development will provide the rest of the globe with an exemplar of how you might be able to engage in this industry in a less harmful manner. So for example, to kind of operationalize what I'm saying, we've been a strong advocate with the Humboldt Harbor District for a green port implementation. I haven't been here for the last 2 days, but I can assume that there's been a lot of conversation about the boom and bust extractive industries taking, and then leaving a lot of debris behind without thoughtful intention of dismantling or repurposing, for that matter. And a lot of those industries have used really dirty, carbon-heavy equipment. We see evidence of smokestacks. I've been here 30 years. On my way, I actually worked here at the county office for 12 years. And I live in Fieldbrook, and I would drive past 4 smokestacks to get to work every day. And some days when the inversion layer was in, man, you could smell the particulate matter. You could feel it burn your lungs. And so if we're going to engage in an industry as disruptive, we hope, as offshore wind, we have to do it in the cleanest way possible. We have to do it in a way that provides opportunity for the people that were the original stewards and tenders of Mother Earth. That's our indigenous people. And so we said, we need a green port. We want electrified vehicles and tugboats. And originally the reaction was, it's technically impossible. And so then we set to doing some great research. I have a fellow from the Department of Energy and a fellow from the West Coast Ocean Alliance. And we crafted a white paper about the feasibility of implementing a green port. And we were invited by the Harbor District to meet with their staff and to share our findings. And we were so excited to share. And then they got excited about the findings and they invited us to share with the Harbor District Commissioners. And we did that last month. And guess what they've done, you guys? They've adopted a resolution for a green port implementation. Advocacy matters with research, right? We had to help our community find the way and find the path. There are still many questions to be addressed. We haven't figured out all the solutions. But we're going to continue. I call it scrappy advocacy with a smile, right? So like, I'm going to be really nice and I'm going to come to you with some solutions. But we're going to make sure that this, assuming that this industry happens, is done kind of on tribal terms, right? There's opportunity to influence community benefits agreements. There's opportunity to influence what our docks and our ports and what happens on the waterway. There's opportunity for real viable jobs. I know Jason Ramos, Councilmember Ramos says, we don't want to be the truck drivers anymore. We want to own the truck company. So when we think about offshore wind, what does that mean? What are the widgets? How can we uplift traditional ecological knowledge to potentially design for and produce in as green a manner as possible components for offshore wind? Or how might we be the ones that own dockfront property and make sure that goods that aren't just going to support the Humboldt lease area, but theoretically the Humboldt Bay is really important to offshore wind all up and down the West Coast. So it's possible that there will be production of elements that get barged out of Humboldt Bay and down to Morro Bay or up to Coos Bay or up even further into Washington over time. So we want to make sure that if our port is a significant driver in offshore wind, that we're doing it in as environmentally friendly a manner as possible. So Blue Lake Rancheria's position on offshore wind is not necessarily shared with many of our other tribal nations. And we're going to advance the concerns that we all have together in unity, and we respect each tribal nation's unique perspective and position. So with that, I feel like it's most appropriate that I yield to our Wiyot representative, whose ancestors have been the incredible tenders of where we are situated right now in this time and space. So Marnie, closing remark.
So thank you so much to both of you. In fact, a lot of the questions that came in, you both adequately addressed with your remarks. We do have one question that we would like to ask, and then I recognize we're running a little bit behind schedule here, but we're going to break at 2:50. So we've got about 5 minutes.
But go ahead and do the question.
We'll make this a two-part question then. What are your biggest concerns regarding developing and engagement? But then also, what are some opportunities that you see?
For myself, one of the major issues and concerns that I have is the development of the heavy lift port. You saw a map of where it's going to be developed earlier in one of the slides. It's directly across from Tolawut, which is a sacred place to the Wiyot people. To me, that's very concerning. How are we to do ceremony? How are we to, to pray for our world? How are we to reclaim our songs, our dances, our language, if I have to look at a ginormous turban being grown? And we have shared that concern with both the Harbor District and developers. So that's a conversation that needs to continue to happen. What does that look like? to the Wiyot people as we conduct ceremony. And the other thing is that it isn't just on the island. We have ceremonial sites all around Wiki. So that's one of my concerns. I think one of the positives is that I absolutely want to stop our reliance on fossil fuel. And I could probably even say we want that to happen. But you know, I don't know. This can't be an extractive industry. It can't be. And it can't leave us with dams that we then have to tear down in 20 years, you know, or something, right, that we'll have to tear down in 20 years, that the onus is on us to absorb that cost. So those are concerns, but those are also discussion points that we can have with all the developers. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, echo what you said right there. I guess I also have a concern that if we don't find a way to significantly disrupt our over-reliance on fossil fuels and bring in clean electrons, you know, the continued demise of the quality of life that we all hope for ourselves and the 7 generations out. So, I mean, there are like innumerable relevant concerns associated with an industry this size. And so we don't have enough time to kind of go into all of those, but absolutely around cultural viewsheds, ceremony, and making sure that if this project goes forward, that it's designed in a manner that tries to take those very important constructs into consideration. I will say also for those that aren't from Humboldt County, if you're visiting, I see a few people from Oregon. If you're visiting from Oregon or Washington, one thing that I might recommend that you do is find a community agency such as the Core Hub that we have out of Humboldt Area Foundation. Honestly, Blue Lake Rancheria would not have the seat at the table to help inform what happens with offshore wind if we didn't receive the support around capacity from Core Hub. And so we can't influence on our own, and we need support around capacity. So find who your community organizers are, and ask if they will assist you through your own journey with this industry. And then opportunities. I think the opportunity for improved electrification, access to electricity, bolstering of transmission lines. One thing also is that we would love to see transmission land on shore so that actually folks within Northern California have improved reliability. While we also know that that probably isn't going to help places that are really rural, like Hoopa and Karuk. So we need to simultaneously be designing alternatives, i.e. solar, microgrids, so that we can have equitable access to diversified sources of energy. So the opportunity to work on the design and build out of things like nested microgrids for our disadvantaged communities.